Photographs emerged of Matt Hancock kissing a woman. Grant Shapps said the long-time friend of Matt Hancock would have gone through a very rigorous process before being given a job at the health department. Yeah, I bet. Rigorous, you say. Stills from what appeared to be CCTV footage in the Health Secretary's Whitehall office, published in The Sun, showed Hancock in what the paper called a clinch with Gina Colladananan, who he first met when they were studying at Oxford University. Gina Colladangelo. I should have known that already, shouldn't I? I've been paying scant attention. Just the very idea of Matt Hancock coming at anybody with his mouth just fills me with disgust. No offence. Shapps, the transport... Can you believe that Grant Shapps is the actual Transport Secretary?
No.
Hard to credit, but it's true. Grant Shapps, who is in charge of transport... And hasn't transport improved since Grant Shapps took over?
No.
He's the Transport Secretary. He also said that Matt Hancock was following COVID rules. Right. What rules are they, then? Lick your nearest stranger. That rule. According to The Sun, the images were from the 6th of May. And under the government's unlocking timetable, intimate contact with people outside your own household was only permitted from the 17th of May. And that clinch was from the 6th of May. He was following COVID rules, says Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary. Excellent gaslighting there, Grant Shapps. It's like he's using one of those Jedi mind tricks. These are not the clinches you think they are. Yes, they are. You're not a Jedi, Grant Shapps. In November last year, Labour complained about apparent cronyism after it emerged that Colladangelo, the head of marketing at the Oliver Bonus... Oh, the details of this are exquisite. Oliver Bonus retail chain. What was Matt Hancock's bonus? Don't ask. In November last year, Labour complained about apparent cronyism. Apparent? Oh, just stick the boot in, Labour. Stop being so blooming polite. Apparent. The head of marketing at the Oliver Bonus retail chain was first made an unpaid advisor at the Department of Health and Social Care, and then a non-executive director, if you please, a part-time role paid £15,000 a year. You can't get a part-time role that pays £15,000 a year. Don't ask. It is not available. Parliamentary records show that in 2019, Matt Hancock sponsored Colladangelo for a parliamentary pass. She was formerly an executive for the PR and lobbying firm Luther Pendragon, which boasts of how it's highly connected with the government. An executive for a PR lobbying firm right at the heart of government is what he ushered in by All Hands Hancock. Isn't that so totally Tory?
Yes.
Labour said that while ministers are entitled to a private life, there needed to be full transparency about whether any rules have been broken over the appointment. Oh, jeez. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. Labour, you're not going to get anywhere with that. Oh, well, you might have not done something quite correct and followed all of the relevant rules and regulations. Let's have an inquiry, said Labour. You should be tearing chunks out of these people. Grant Shapps said, the only thing I know is that if you are appointed to a government position, there are very rigorous programmes in place. Please, Grant Shapps, I am begging you, stop saying rigorous. In an interview with this station on whether any lockdown rules have been broken, Shapps said, yes, obviously you have seen the pictures with your own eyes. I'm joking, of course he didn't say that. He actually said he was quite sure that whatever the rules were at the time, they were followed.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah. Last year, you will recall when Professor Neil Ferguson, the epidemiologist who was helping shape the government's response to the coronavirus, he quit his advisory role for breaking social distancing rules by having a woman of the opposite sex visit him at his home. Hancock at the time said he would support the idea of police taking action against him. Punishment for those outside the cult, a free pass for those inside. According to the Stun, images show Hancock and Coladangelo kissing at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the 6th of May. What? Before supper? In the afternoon? During daylight?
Dreadful.
An unnamed friend of the Health Secretary told the paper he has no comment on personal matters. No rules have been broken. Yeah, that friend wasn't you, was it, Matt? A Labour spokesmodel said, "Ministers, like everyone, are entitled to a private life. However, when taxpayers' money is involved or jobs are being offered to close friends who are in a personal relationship with a minister, then that needs to be looked into. The government needs to be open and transparent about whether there are any conflicts of interests or rules that have been broken." Which is just exactly what you would expect from an insipid Labour Party these days. I mean, most of the audience will have fallen asleep after about 3 words. On the other hand, Ed Davey, out of the Liberal Democrats, tweeted, "The reason Matt Hancock should resign is that he's a terrible health secretary, not because of his private life." That's the way to do it. Completely correct in every respect. He shouldn't get fired for this. He should get fired for literally everything else. But Bodger won't fire somebody who's just incompetent and can't do their job very well. Because that would reflect poorly on it. People might think, well, hang on a minute. What about you? Puh! Hancock has previously been accused of showing favours to friends. No. Really? And other acts of cronyism, such as, but not limited to, awarding a contract to a former neighbour to produce vials for NHS COVID-19 tests, despite him having had no previous experience of producing medical supplies. But excellent experience in being Matt Hancock's friend. He passed that test with flying colours. Last month, Matt Hancock was found to have broken the ministerial code in technical terms by failing to declare a stake in a family company that won an NHS contract. What? Only technically did he break the law. Oh, well, that's all right then. It was only technically breaking the law. It wasn't even a law, it's a code. Questions were raised also about Hancock's register of interest, given that his sister and brother-in-law run a company called Topwood Limited, in which the Health Secretary has a 20% stake. The firm, you will be unsurprised to learn, won a contract with the NHS, but he, Matt Hancock, did not immediately declare his interest. And he did not resign and will not be investigated by the authorities because, I don't know, statues or flags, Her Majesty, sausages. 0345 6060 973, text 84850, email nick@lbc.co.uk, and if you're on Twitter, you might like to wonder if this is any way to run a country.
Dreadful.
Doncaster, hello Charles.
Oh, hi Nick. Are you well and groovy?
I'm well.
Okay, I'm going to attempt to defend Matt Hancock.
Yes.
Can I give you pros and cons?
The pros and cons of Matt Hancock.
Yes.
Right.
I'll give you a pro. Matt Hancock does detail, unlike his master.
He does detail?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Well, goes into the detail of things and then tells the rest of the world.
All right. Well, you're making no sense so far. Carry on.
Okay. Cons. Shall I go through the cons next?
Right. Let's see what that's like.
He does not give good TV. Frankly, he looks ugly.
Compared to which other cabinet minister?
Well, The average.
The average.
Actually,
Of all the things that you could have picked on, that's the one that's on the shakiest ground. I mean, he may not be to your taste, Sir Charles, nor mine, but ugly is stretching it a bit. Gormless, I think that would be spot on. It is indisputable that Matt Hancock looks gormless.
Affirmative.
Ugly, well, that's debatable. Clueless, yes. Hideous to the eye, maybe not. But anyway, good work there, Charles. Peterborough, hello, Morris.
Nick, good evening to you.
Yes, Morris.
Splendid. Your scepticism, before we go on to Nick Hancock, I remember 1966.
Not Nick. I don't know who Nick Hancock is. He's probably excellent in every regard.
Good evening, Nick.
Yes.
Before we get on to Hancock, I remember the summer of 1966 when brave
1966.
boys, the football team,
Oh, yes.
managed to lift the Football World Cup from the Germans. And football isn't my game anyway. So
You don't say.
I did. You heard me.
Yeah.
So
It's not Boris
but
Johnson's game either, but he has acquired a very late interest in it because he thinks that that's what his cult fans would want to hear him say. Oh, the soccer ball this week.
Whatever it is.
Marvellous. Yeah.
Whatever it is, yes. I'm not entirely sure if he's got a game. He runs, doesn't he, and he cycles, but whatever else.
Yeah. How's the health kit going there, Boris?
Yeah, a bit of weight put on, don't you think? But that's because of the COVID, of course. And Hancock is finished, surely.
No.
Well, he must be.
What, for kissing a person who wasn't married to?
Well, was it just kissing?
Well, it doesn't make any difference.
There was a fairly obvious buttock grab there, which looked rather passionate.
Yeah.
And I'm not entirely sure Mrs. Hancock would be totally.
Well,
totally approval.
Well, we have no idea. Maybe she's thrilled that she is not the subject of his attention quite so much. We've got no idea.
And with somebody with his eyes so close together as that, would you believe a word he ever said?
I don't believe a word he ever says, but it's got nothing to do with how close his eyes are together. He could have one eye in the middle of his forehead, and he wouldn't be any more believable to me.
It's the David Cameron syndrome, surely. Their eyes are so close set together, and
what is this about his face? It's got nothing to do with his face. The last one said that he's got to go because he's ugly, and you're saying he's got to go because his eyes are too close together. What difference does that make? I mean, unless he's got his head in a vice and it's squeezing his skull and making his eyes closer together, then we shouldn't really be concerned about that one way or the other. What we should be concerned about is the enormous mansion of dead people that he's left in his wake. Let's have Brighton. Hello, John.
Is that John in Brighton?
Yes, John, in Brighton.
Yeah. Rock and roll, Nick. Rock and roll. That's what it's all about.
Is it?
You should give Matt Hancock a break. I mean, he's been fighting the pandemic for the year. He's got all that power, controlling all that money, and all that pent up energy. He's ready to explode.
Yeah. Okay.
And you've got to have some benefits on the side.
Right.
With all that power. You know what I mean? Have a bit of rumpy pumpy.
Right. Okay. Thanks, John. Am I hallucinating, or have we, has the quality of calls taken a step down somewhat? Isleworth. Hello, Ravi.
Yes, Nick, how are you, sir?
I'm good, thanks.
The question is this, Nick. Let's not digress from the fact that we have the best vaccination undergoing in the world under the stewardship of Mr. Hancock.
What do you mean by best?
Well, come on. We've had about, 65% double dose, and compared to other countries. But more importantly, Nick, we have a few people calling in seem to be whiter than white, as if they haven't done anything naughty in their lives. I would like the Sun to name their source. How can this be done in a government office without any legality in place? Would you agree with me in that, Nick?
Would I agree that the Sun should name its source? Of course not.
Why?
It's called freedom of the press.
Are you honestly saying in your life you haven't done anything naughty or kissed anyone out of the blue?
Ravi, don't you understand the basic principle at heart here? He was the man who was instigating the rules.
Yeah.
That's why it's a thing.
Right. But as your other people have said, is he the only one who's broken the rules?
No, but he was the one that was making the rules.
And people like us and you were breaking the rules as well.
But
Let's
we weren't making the rules. Which part of this is hard for you to understand?
What I find hard is people on a witch hunt, and I find that hard
A witch hunt? Are you... which planet are you living on, Ravi? A witch hunt. The man who has fashioned the worst death rate of any major country in the world.
That's wrong for the start. I think India and Brazil are 1 and 2.
It isn't wrong.
What's your source for that? We having more deaths in India and Brazil?
Not number.
Name your source. You just
per head of population.
That's absolutely wrong, Nick. You know that very well. Brazil,
I don't know anything of the sort. We have a combination of the worst death rate and the worst economic hit of any major nation on Earth.
Okay, Nick, let me put you on the spot. Who do you have to replace him? Answer the question.
You could do a better job. His dog could do a better job.
No, you're absolutely wrong, Nick. Don't pretend to be whiter than white. You've done things in your life which shouldn't have come out.
Ravi,
Nick,
the point which you are pretending not to understand is that he was the man that was setting the rules.
Fine, I do accept that, but
right.
What is going to be achieved by going on and on? Look, whether you accept it or not, that Conservatives will come back to power. We saw it.
They're in power. What are you talking about?
Well, at the next election, they'll still come back to power.
Well, what's your source?
My source is
making it up.
No. But answer this question then. What about this?
Hang on a minute. Go back up. What do you mean that the Conservatives will get into power at the next election? As though, I mean, that's just saying no.
The British people don't care about these trivial matters.
The British people should care.
To be whiter than white.
Oh my God! Stop saying whiter than white.
Okay, you've done things in your life which shouldn't have come out. Correct? How would you like it if someone had a camera secretly filming you? Would you like that, Nick? Answer the question.
Ravi, how is it that, what are we in now? Like 5 minutes into this conversation, you are still pretending not to understand the basic point that he was the man who was setting the rules for the rest of the country and yet breaking them himself.
Oh, Nick, what don't you understand? That people always think that they are... Anyway, Nick, nice chatting to you.
Yeah, well, not really. Kind of irritating. 0345 6060 973. And I'll say again, he shouldn't be fired for that. I don't care one way or the other. Apart from it sending a shudder of disgust through me. But it don't make never mind who he kisses or what he kisses when he's I almost said on the job at work. That's not why he should be fired. He should be fired for literally everything else he's ever done. I mean, Boris Johnson himself called him bleeping hopeless. And other things as well that we've just found out. And absolutely nothing happens because no amount of ineptitude will get you fired from this government, because it would put the spotlight on the king of ineptitude, Bodger Johnson himself. He can't fire anyone because people will say, well, hang on a minute, you did the exact same thing. Woodstock, Nikolai.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
I find this situation utterly hilarious because we have reached a point where even Lawrence Fox is a more trustworthy politician than the ones that are running the government. I find it just hilarious. I had barely anything to say about how stupid Matt Hancock was to do this at a time when he was supposed to be House Secretary, not a damn womanizer.
Right. Okay. Thanks a lot, Nikolai. I'm sure that he wasn't in expectation of having a picture of his canoodling plastered all over the front pages of the papers. See, that is actually really properly bizarre. I mean, that's a sort of a separate story. Somebody will be desperately trying to get to the bottom of it. So let's assume that he was invited to resign rather than decided to do the right thing. I mean, if you had to lay money on either or, which would it be? And if you choose decided to do the right thing, then I have a genuine made-in-China Rolex watch I'd like to sell you. I mean, it's a post-moral world that they're in. None of them think that anything they do is reason to resign, and Bodge doesn't think that anything his minions do is grounds to get sacked. So it's a public opinion thing. It's you what won it. They initially thought they could just pull one of their "don't question us, peasant" routines that their fans absolutely love because it upsets the Liberals. I bet they've had focus groups, meetings of PR people, reputation managers. They'll have been on the phone to their friends in the press wanting to know how bad the coverage was going to get. And when they realised that this time the British public had been presented with the one thing they won't forget, a sex scandal. Coupled with a rule maker being a rule breaker, then the whole edifice of incompetence and crookedness finally seemed too big to ignore, regardless of whose side you were on. And they realised they couldn't just bluster their way out of it. Pah! Wouldn't work anymore. And he was invited to resign. I betcha. But resign on what grounds? Breaking the rules that he set? Well, Michael Gove did that. Boris Johnson's dad did that. The entire G7 crew did that. Every VIP that comes to the Euro 2020 games will break that. They've all got to go. And if it was for fraternising with a work colleague or pouring public money over someone you're having sex with, well, that can't be it. Because then Bodger, the philanderer-in-chief, he would have been first out the door. If it was that he'd abused the trust put in him, well, the whole cabinet should be penning their goodbye note. Maybe it was for making us all a bit ill, watching a video that we really didn't want to see but couldn't stop watching, and now we can't get it out of our minds.
Disgusting.
Awful. Once seen, you can't unsee it. But it does illuminate why the whole lot of them seem to be laughing all the time, doesn't it? I mean, the entire regime just can't stop laughing. They laugh at everything. Even when they've got their masks on, you can see it in their eyes that they're laughing. Especially when they're being accused of doing something that they shouldn't. You know, as though they've all been coached to do it. They laugh and they shake their hands. Their heads. Hands. Their heads. As though every charge is the most ridiculous thing that they've ever heard. And they can't quite believe that anyone would be so presumptuous as to question them. Bodger does it in PMQs every single time. Paw! He drops his jaw and just looks around him as though to say, who, me? So there's that. That's why they're laughing, because they're continually getting away with it. But it also seems to be rutting season in Westminster 12 months a year. So maybe it's that. And because we didn't call for Boris to get sacked when he broke the rules multiple times, he pulled a pint, maskless, in a Hartlepool pub last month. We couldn't do any such thing, against the rules, and we didn't say a thing. And he did the same thing the previous month, in April, when he stood, pint in hand, no mask, bellowing at drinkers seated at tables in a pub garden in Wolverhampton, when his own rules for outdoor drinking stipulated that tables do not mix. You've got to go with your own bubble. And you can be seated only, not vertical. And he didn't pen his letter of resignation, and we didn't demand it. And, of course, he famously caught COVID when he went shaking everyone's hand and boasted about it on a COVID ward, despite being flanked by experts who said that no one should do any such thing. Not a peep. So it's not the rule breaking by those that make the rules, that's the thing. It's who's doing the breaking. Either it's that Boris is allowed to do anything, but when someone else does it, it's wrong and they must go. All hail the glorious dear leader, he who does no wrong. Either it's that. But I don't think so, because Michael Gove waltzed into a pret-a-manger last year, ignoring the rules about wearing a mask indoors, and nothing happened. The parliamentary bars used to exempt MPs from wearing masks in those tiny confined spaces, when we weren't even allowed to go into a pub. Rishi Sunak had a get-together in a restaurant with no masks, and nothing happened. So maybe it's the sex scandal part. That's where we draw the line. And if that's it, well, that's pathetic. Dominic Cummings launched another attack on the government's COVID response. He's the gift that keeps on giving, ain't he? Dominic Cummings, the Prime Minister's former aide and full-time Gollum impersonator, wrote in his blog that the Prime Minister said Matt Hancock's test and trace plan was like whistling in the dark, meaning that it was an attempt to pretend that everything was fine, rather than a reference to the Andy Williams song of the same name, which was the B-side to Home Lovin' Man, which was the first single I ever owned.
Rock and roll!
In a post titled More Evidence on How the PM's and Hancock's Negligence Killed People. Wow, what a title. Dominic Cummings said to have forwarded a note to Boris Johnson containing data on test and trace. See, this is the background. This is one of the many reasons that Matt Hancock shouldn't have been able to pen that resignation letter, as he should have been fired ages ago. Cummings wrote, if you skim through this, you will have a good idea regarding some of the problems and complexities. As usual, my team of irregulars is having to do this because the centre can't. All this should have been done weeks ago and should not need me to do it, he complained.
Stop whining.
He said, we can't go on like this, which is, I think, what Matt Hancock said to his wife the other day. In response, Bodger Johnson wrote, thanks, totally agree. So they're talking about Matt Hancock, Dominic Cummings and Boris Johnson, about the ineptitude displayed by the Health Minister. Thanks, totally agree, says Bodge. The whole track and trace thing feels like whistling in the dark. Legions of imaginary Clouseaus and no plan to hire them. Apps that don't yet work, and above all, no idea how to get these new cases down to a manageable level or how long it will take, by which time the UK may have secured the double distinction of being the European country with the most fatalities and the biggest economic hit. So your email is bang on, wrote Boris Johnson. He actually wrote that. I mean, he would never admit it to us, not us poor dopes, who he's supposed to represent, but he knew it was true. And yet he had complete confidence in his health secretary until we demanded that he do something about him. And while Boris Johnson wittered on about British exceptionalism and how well it was all going, he was actually writing internal memos saying that we were on track to being the worst responding country in Europe. Cummings previously published a WhatsApp message from Johnson appearing to show him calling the health secretary totally bleeping hopeless. And he still professed to have full confidence in him. Cummings said there's no doubt at all that many senior people perform far, far disastrously below the standards that which the country has the right to expect. I think the Secretary of State for Health is certainly one of those people. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I agree with Dominic Cummings.
What?
He famously said, I think the Secretary of State for Health should have been fired for at least 15 or 20 things, including lying to everybody on multiple occasions in meeting after meeting in the Cabinet room and publicly. And here's where it gets interesting. Here's the best bit. In response to that, Matt Hancock said the allegations were unsubstantiated and untrue. He said the allegations that were put are serious allegations, and I welcome the opportunity to come to the House to formally, on the record, state that these unsubstantiated allegations around honesty are not true. He said, I've been straight with people in public and in private throughout. Yeah, I don't think so. And so they had a poll. What do you think, people? Up to this point, there had been no wave of disapproval. One snap poll by Comres, released hours after photographs of the pair canoodling, said 58% of UK adults thought that he should resign, compared to 25% who thought that he shouldn't. YouGov polled 6,500 Brits. 49% thought that he should quit, 25% thought he should remain, and 27% said they were unsure. Really? 27% said they were unsure? They said... So it seems to me the moral line that British people will not cross is having an affair if you are not Boris Johnson. I mean, they'll vote for you all day long if you are Boris Johnson and you have sex with anything that stays still long enough. Him, we don't mind. But if you happen to not be that funny bloke off the telly, then that's where we draw the line. Unforgivable. I mean, we don't seem to mind much about a mountain of dead bodies and the serial ineptitude and the grasping and the corruption and the cronyism and the double standards. It's not even double standards, it's a lack of any standards whatsoever. All that we are completely okay with. But smooch with some totty from the office, oh my God, that's the worst thing we've ever heard. Let's skip the trial and go straight to the execution. Here's why Matt Hancock should have been fired yonks ago. Let's look at Japan. Japan is so close to China that you could spit that far. Let's compare and contrast Japan's response to the virus with ours and see what we find. Well now, Japan has twice as many people as we do here. They've got 126 million people in Japan. We have 66 million. Their population density is greater. They're more closely packed together than we are. So more easily transmissible the virus is. Now I'm sounding like that Muppet from Star Wars. More easily transmissible the virus is. Their population density, 347 people per square kilometre. Ours, only 275. So there's twice as many of them, and they're more tightly packed together. In Japan, they've had 780,000 cases so far. We've had 4.5 million. And you might say, well, that's because they test more. Well, let's look at deaths, shall we? In Japan, 14,000 deaths. Here, 128,000. We win! Edinburgh, Marion.
Oh, hi. I've lost my thread a little because I was laughing so much at your last thing. So, your guy, the caller couple before that mentioned Michael Gove has kind of got onto where I was going, but it's basically Dominic Cummings, right?
Yeah.
I recall speaking to you a couple of months ago, and I said, you know that charade and the farce of coming out at number 10 with his plant pot and his wee box? I said, he's not finished. He's just working in the back. He's been put in cold storage. There's a plan.
That wasn't a plant pot, by the way. That was a hat. But anyway.
Well, yeah, he's bits and bobs or whatever. But I was convinced that this is so ridiculous. There's a plan. He's in cold storage, and he's going to be wheeled out when he's needed.
Right.
Now, I'm thinking maybe he's had to be wheeled out a little earlier than planned.
So he's been hiding in the fridge that Boris Johnson sneaked into.
Or the one, or the one next door. But yeah, I think. But the thing is, the thing with Dominic. Oh, sorry, you guys said Michael Gove. I think the whole plan is to get Michael Gove in as Prime Minister.
The thing with that, though, is Michael Gove, as far as having appeal to the general public, doesn't have any. We don't like him. We don't like the way he speaks. We certainly don't like the way he looks. Everything about him makes us feel creepy and uncomfortable. He's not a winner as far as electioneering is concerned, like Bodger Johnson is, because Bodger is the cuddly teddy off the telly. He's the funny bloke that everybody likes. You know, he's the one that, even though he's so staggeringly inept that he shouldn't be allowed to tie his own shoelaces, people continually call me and say that I should stop being mean to him because he's doing his best. No one would ever do that for Michael Gove.
No, but the thing is that they're in already now, so if they have a new leader, then we're sort of stuck, aren't we? But, you know, like,
I suppose so, yeah.
I can't do that, but I just think the thing with Dominic Cummings, I think people are getting this wrong. They're trying to just sort of understand his motivation like he's a politician or a normal human. It's like he's... I think his motivation is to prove he's smarter than everybody.
Yeah.
And whether that's with deviousness or whatever, he just wants to prove he's smarter. He doesn't care about his morals. He doesn't care about what he achieves. He just wants to prove he's smarter.
Well, it's not a very high bar, Dominic Cummings. I don't think you have to really stress yourself to prove that.
This is true, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's not got something to do with that sneaky camera in the office.
Well, it seems a bit... I don't know, it seems a bit unlikely, doesn't it? I mean, really, is that what we're dealing with here? People who secrete cameras in other people's offices?
Would you put it past him?
I don't think I know enough about him. Well, no, I wouldn't I wouldn't put it past him because I do know enough about him. But whether he's actually responsible or not, I've got absolutely no idea. But no, he would use any trick that is available to humankind to get the result that he is after. We know that from Brexit.
Yeah. But I think the result he's after is not an objective. It's just to prove at every step he is smarter, or he can move something, or he can do something. I think the man is motivated purely by that, not like an objective of, world ruler or something. Just like,
he just wants to thumb his nose at everybody and say, you stupid morons. That.
Yes, exactly. And those people are dangerous.
Well, they're either dangerous, or he's either the person who's going to put us all in danger, or he's the person who's going to save us all.
It will be both. This is the thing. It's both. Because his motives are neither malicious nor benign. His motives are his own. They're not to do with anything that anyone else is thinking about.
He has no interest in the country, in you or I or anybody who lives here. It's all a personal thing with him to show that he is megamind.
That's what I think.
Right.
Yep.
Well, I think his brain is so big that it seems to have pushed all of his hair out. So there is that. All right, thanks a lot, Marion. 0345 6060 973. John texts that the Hancock thing is the underlying script here that they are telling us no one has had sex during the pandemic. What? The Hancock thing is the underlying script here that they are telling us no one has had sex during the pandemic. What a hypocritical reason to oust the man. Over all that is Hancock is crooked and gormless, but that goes for all of them surely best. I think some of these need editing before they get put in front of my eyeballs, because it makes me sound like an idiot. You believe that?
Yes.
Anyway, thanks a lot, John. Try harder next time. What a hypocritical reason to oust the man. Well, if that is the reason that he's been ousted, and it seems to be, I mean, it's the only thing that has stuck to him at all. You know, the mountain of dead people in his rearview mirror, we're not really that bothered about that. In fact, every misstep, every miscalculation, every staggering U-turn and false statement of untruth and all of the rest of it, this giant edifice of wrongdoing, 44% of the people are still determinedly supporting the regime. They won't hear a word against them. But then this sex thing pops up and everybody's eyeballs are out on stalks and we can't stop talking about it. How utterly British. I mean, it's British like from the 1970s, though, isn't it? That video footage could have done with a Benny Hill soundtrack.